Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Katrina Sale, and I am the coordinator of the APPG for Entrepreneurship, and we're very grateful to Kingsley Napley for sponsoring this event. The Entrepreneurs Network is a think tank for Britain's most ambitious entrepreneurs, and we are the secretariat for the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Entrepreneurship, which was set up to encourage and support and promote entrepreneurship. It also ensures that Parliament is kept up to date on what is needed to create and sustain the most favourable conditions for entrepreneurship. We bridge the gap between entrepreneurs and policymakers with the aim of making Britain the best place in the world to start and grow a business. And we are delighted to bring you today's webinar, where we'll be discussing the future of visas and immigration. So today is an opportunity to hear from our speakers about the current visas and immigration system and expectations for the future, to learn how the new system will impact your business, and share your views on what entrepreneurs need from the immigration system. We're delighted to be joined by two fantastic speakers. Lord Bilimoria is the founder of Cobra Beer, and if I were to mention everything in his CV, we'd be here all day, but I will mention that in June 2020, he was appointed president of the Confederation of British Industry. He has a long and distinguished history of campaigning on issues to improve the UK's immigration system, particularly for students and graduates. We're also joined today by Nick Rollason, who is a partner and head of Kingsley Napley's immigration practice. He advises on all areas of UK immigration and nationality law, and has particular expertise in providing strategic advice to businesses on their global immigration needs. Throughout this event, please put your questions in the chat box, and the Q&A section of the meeting will be hosted by Philip Salter, who is the founder of the Entrepreneurs Network. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lord Bilimoria.
Thank you so much, Katrina, and thank you, Philip, and everything that you do for the Entrepreneurs Network, do for the APPG for Entrepreneurs. And I've been a member of the House of Lords now for 14 and a half years. And there are a few of us who are entrepreneurs in the House of Lords, and a few, I suppose there might be a few in the House of Commons as well. But it's something that I'm very passionate about, very proud of. And I always look back to when I came from India as a 19-year-old student in the early 80s. Britain was definitely not seen at that time as an entrepreneurial country. It was seen very much as the sick man of Europe. It was an economy that was going nowhere, and it was not a great place to start a business. And in every way, the prospects didn't look very bright. And then things changed. Things changed in front of my eyes. And Britain as an economy under Margaret Thatcher, whether you liked her or not, she opened up the British economy. She encouraged and championed entrepreneurship. Lord Young, her business minister, who is still active to this day. I think David must be, he's in the House of Lords with me. I think David must be almost 90 years old, but he never stops. And he was the business minister at that time, a businessman himself, promoting entrepreneurship as well. And you had this change from entrepreneurs seen as bellboys and secondhand car salesmen to people who are celebrated and championed. And it suddenly became very cool to be an entrepreneur. And of course, all governments, whether they've been conservative, Labour, coalition, conservative, liberal, or pure, whatever, they are for entrepreneurship and they are pro-entrepreneurship. And they're all there to try and create an environment for entrepreneurship to flourish. And of course, to start a business from scratch is not easy. I mean, I was a student in this country. I remember that to get a visa to come as a student, you were not allowed to stay on and work after you finished your studies. And I remember being a member of the UK-India Roundtable, and after I brought up this point, saying, why can't we have graduates allowed to stay on and work for 2 years after they finish their studies? And Scotland at that time was allowing that, and the rest of the UK wasn't. And I said, aren't we meant to be one United Kingdom when it comes to immigration? And we took it up, and I championed that in the House of Lords. And at that time, it was a Labour government. They listened. And in 2008, we had the 2-year post-graduation work visa that was brought in that I take huge pride in having pioneered and spearheaded with cross-party support. And it was great. The number of students, countries like India rocketed. And then in 2012, when Theresa May was Home Secretary, it was taken away. And we suddenly moved to a very hostile immigration environment for quite a few years. And from that time, 2012 onwards, I, along with others, were trying very hard to bring back the 2-year post-graduation work visa. And then, of course, the government brought in a net migration target, and international students were included within net migration figures, which, again, didn't make logical sense at all. And we carried on fighting, but the government wouldn't listen. And Theresa May, of course, then became Prime Minister, and we just were not making any progress there at all. In the meantime, I became the founding co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on International Students. I was then appointed the president of UKISA, the UK Council of International Student Affairs, looking after the interests of all 450,000 international students, including 130,000 from the European Union. And again, we kept pushing for this. Remove this students from the net migration figures, bring back the 2-year post-graduation work visa, bring in a target for international students. We're in a global race against Canada, against Australia, against the United States of America. We have the best universities in the world along with America, and yet we were losing market share. Countries like Canada, the High Commissioner to India for Canada would tease me when I would bump into him in India and say, "What are you doing in the UK? I'm getting all the Indian students. We're now up to 100,000 Indian students in Canada. What are you up to?" The Australians, and I meet the Australian High Commissioner in India, she would say, "What are you doing? We have a Minister for International Students. We're taking market share from you." Anyway, hallelujah. Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister last year. And one of the first things he does is to bring back the 2-year post-graduation work visa. So we got it back. And I tell you, when it was announced, I use one example. Exeter University very kindly gave me an honorary doctorate some years ago. Their interest from Indian students straight after the announcement, even before the rules came into effect, went up by 312%. So it's working. And in all the research that was done before this, during this period from 2012 to 2019, we had survey after survey that said the #1 reason why international students didn't choose the United Kingdom as their #1 choice for British universities was the lack of post-graduation work opportunities. Canada offered it, Australia offered it, America offered it. We stopped it. And so we've now addressed that. We also have a target to reach 600,000 international students. We no longer have a net migration target at all. So that's gone. And that hostile immigration environment has now changed completely for the better. And by the way, if you've got a PhD, you can stay on for 3 years and work for 3 years afterwards. So this is great news. And I think as a former international student myself, if you can stay on and work, it helps you to earn some money to pay for your education. It's expensive to study abroad, especially in the UK. And you can get work experience. You can continue to build those amazing bridges that you build, generation-long bridges with the countries of origin and the UK. I mean, both my grandfathers were students in the UK. One was a cadet at Sandhurst, the military academy. My other grandfather was at the University of Birmingham. He learned how to fly and then joined the Royal Indian Air Force and flew as a pilot right through to the Second World War. I'm now an honorary group captain in 601 Squadron. My mother went to university in the UK to Birmingham. Her brother did his PhD at Birmingham. I went to university in this country. And 3 of my children now are, one has graduated from a British university and 2 are still at British university. So 4 generations. These are amazing. Our universities and our international students are one of our strongest elements of soft power. Then we have the points-based immigration system, which has been brought up by the government. We no longer have free movement. So European Union citizens can no longer just automatically come here and study and work. We are now, the whole world is treated the same under the points-based system. So we can have a discussion about how effective is this point-based system going to be. We're going to have a system that where business does business back the government's ambition. Where if you look at it from the government's point of view, this system is meant to be better than what we had before and for the whole world. There are no more limits, there are no more caps to people who can come and work. You can get people, as long as it's a minimum salary threshold of 25,000, just over 25,000 pounds, or it can be lowered to 20,000 pounds, just over 20,000 pounds, if it's a skills shortage. You can bring people in from around the world. And there are various categories for IT workers, for global talent, for sports people, for the creative industries. And it's trying to enable us to attract the best talent and what British business needs. Even agricultural workers, seasonal agricultural workers can come in as well. And it's a very clear points-based system where you get a certain number of points for speaking English, you get a certain number of points for meeting the salary threshold, and you get your 70 points that you need to be able to come and work over here. And if you work and live here for a certain period of time, 5 years, you can get permanent residency as well and stay on in the UK. So it's meant to be welcoming, it's meant to be all embracing, it's all around the world, and it's meant to enable us to get the best talent. Now, is business ready for it? Not yet, but we at the CBI, where I'm proud to be president, are helping. We've worked with Deloitte, who've been phenomenally supportive in helping us on this area. We produced a report recently, which you can see, an employer-focused guide. It's on the CBI website. So I will stop there. And before I stop, I want to just, where the CBI is concerned, I don't know how many of you know about the CBI and what it is, but it's the largest business organization in the UK, the preeminent business organization. We speak for 190,000 businesses, which include over 140 trade associations, from the National Farmers Union to the Law Society, to the Retail Association, to the Hospitality Association. They're all in there. So covering all sectors and employing 7 million people. That's 1/3 of the private sector workforce. And we have regional offices and regional directors, and my equivalent president, regional chairs are in every region of England and in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland as well. And we have offices in Brussels, in Beijing, in Washington, and in Delhi. So we're international. And we've left the European Union, but the CBI continues to be a member of Business Europe, which is the grouping of all the preeminent business organizations, equivalent to CBI, from the European countries and beyond. So there we are. That's a start of a 10, and then I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And yeah, also thank you for all the campaigning you've done over the years. I know that anyone in an organisation like mine, or has you've devoted a lot of time and effort to speak at events like this. So again, thank you very much. Nick, it'd be great to hear your thoughts from the kind of legal side, and then we'll open up to Q&A. So do put your questions in the chat, and as I said we'll try to come to you as well personally, so you can ask the question down the video, which we've done with limited success in the past, but it certainly adds a bit more colour. So Nick, over to you.
Great, thank you so much. And Lord Bilimoria, thank you so much for that brilliant introduction, as well as your life history and your amazing connection with the UK. I'm sure there's no coincidence we've got so many participants on the call just to hear your passion about this subject as well. And I actually wish that the UK government would do what you do in promoting the UK as a great place to come and study and do business. I think it's one of their biggest shortcomings, is that they don't actually promote this publicly. It's left to private actors like us to go off and go around the world and tell people what a great place it is to come here. So I do think the government actually needs to do a lot more in terms of promoting the UK more publicly. There is a big shift away from that, I'd say, that sort of Theresa May approach to immigration to where we are now, which is that we need to be much more open now that we left the EU, and we need to do a lot more to get business and capital flowing into the UK. So I know that Lord Bilimoria will do a great job in continuing to sell the UK. I know that I'm going to focus my comments today really on the areas where you've been very involved in lobbying and getting movement on the immigration side, which is really on the sort of student side, and how to get people into the UK who are great and talented, and how to keep them here. One of the things that we were obviously delighted to have the graduate route come back in when that was announced a couple of years ago, coming in from this summer. We've had huge amounts of queries from it. We've worked with actually quite a lot of the universities, talking to them about the graduate route, as well as other routes for their students, including Tier 5 and various other routes which we think are great. One of the things that we want to make sure is that people who go onto the graduate route can actually use the time they spend on that route to count towards settlement, which is an important thing, and we're hoping that's going to be confirmed. It has been confirmed to us informally, but we haven't seen the rules yet, so we're still waiting with bated breath, because we'd like to see students actually building up time in the UK once they're here, and being able to put some firm roots down here, rather than feel this sort of slightly insecure status that the old post-study work visa had. We also want to see really clear rules on those who graduated in the UK being able to transition into entrepreneurs, not just into skilled workers and being hired by big corporations on graduate programs. We really want to see that those people are able to transition easily, where they've set up businesses while they're here as graduates, post-graduation, that they can transition into a visa category which will enable them to stay and continue to run their businesses and grow their businesses. And one of the concerns that we have is that the remit of the innovator visa is relatively narrow, maybe too narrow, to actually capture those people, because of the way that it requires us to justify that the business is innovative. If you've set up a successful business which is employing lots of people in the 2 years that you're here as a graduate entrepreneur, and it doesn't fall within the remit of the innovator, what are you going to do? There are limited options, and we need to really think about how we keep those people here and enable them to stay on and be successful and create more jobs in the UK. One of the other issues that we haven't really talked about is around youth mobility. We have youth mobility. We had it for many, many years with all Commonwealth countries. Then it was massively slashed back to only cover. We now only really deal with Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And it's a very limited scheme. And one of the things that I was fascinated by was that Italy, during the last year, actually signed a youth mobility agreement with Canada. And my question really is, why isn't the UK trying to get youth mobility agreements with countries in the EU now, and pushing really hard for that on a bilateral basis, to enable potentially limited amounts of people to come in to experience working in the UK as a young person, and usually after graduation. I think as well that Tier 5, the government's reviewing Tier 5. Tier 5 has a whole bunch of different categories in the creative industries, in international agreements, but it has a specific international exchange part of it, which allows young people to come to the UK on exchanges, to come to get work experience and so on. And the government is, I think, looking to cut back on those quite significantly and have a sort of root and branch trim of all of those schemes. And I do think that's going to be problematic. I think the government really needs to actually be looking to open more of those opportunities for young people to come here and get work experience and manage that well and properly, and then feed into the skills pool in the UK rather. The other thing is the cost of immigration is a big issue particularly for startups and for small businesses. The cost of immigration is graded, so smaller businesses tend to pay slightly lower fees, but the overall cost of hiring somebody to come into the UK as a skilled worker can be really, really hard, and particularly where those people are at the sort of beginning of their careers, when the costs are disproportionate as a percentage of their overall salary packages. So I really think that something needs to be done on that front, and either freeze those fees or think about ways to support those businesses that are fast growth and that need high level technical skills, which may be coming from sort of younger people, and where they haven't yet got big pots of private equity going in and paying for salaries. So again, thinking about young businesses starting up and how they can afford to actually access the system. And I think one of the other things that we've lost as part of the EU is obviously the UK's ability to go and provide services freely across Europe, which we've been hearing lots about in the last few weeks. And we've been advising clients over the last couple of years about what the end of the transitional period will mean for professional services, legal services, IT services firms that have big contracts and are sending UK service providers out to fulfill those. That's not been replaced by the trade agreement with the EU properly. It has some service provision elements to it, but they're very, very limited. And we don't have anything in our UK immigration system that really allows foreign service providers to come into the UK. We have a special Tier 5 GATS route, which is hardly ever used because actually it requires the client in the UK is receiving the service to register as a sponsor, which is totally crazy. And we've raised this with the Home Office, saying that actually we think it contravenes a number of international agreements on trade,
because it actually prevents service provision from happening. But again, it's one of the areas where I think the UK is going to need to be more flexible to allow foreign companies to come in and provide services on a short-term basis more flexibly. And I think finally, my final comment really is around data. We saw the post-study work visa being shut off because there was some really quite poor research done and a report done on what those people were doing within the labour market based on visa applications of their partners and spouses applying from outside to join them. And it was a really, I think empirically, a pretty rubbish report. But the outcome of that said that all these guys on their post-study visas who'd finished were flipping burgers and not doing very much and basically doing pretty rubbish jobs. And on that basis, they shut down the category. So I think there needs to be a lot more done around tracking that journey of students from graduation all the way through into work and post-study to really see what they're doing and what they're contributing to the labour market, what they're contributing to the economy, and to be able to have that data to hand to say, look, this is a really beneficial route, because not only does it attract all those students to the UK, but actually what they're doing in the labour market is really productive and really useful. So I think that's really my final comment on that issue. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much, Nick. I think there's a lot there, and I wonder if, before we go to questions, whether Lord Bilimoria wanted to pick up on any of that. I suppose there was transition mentioned, youth mobility agreements, Tier 5, I guess the cost of immigration. Do any of those points kind of resonate with your conversations, Lord Bilimoria, or any of the kind of discussions you're having at the CBI? That's assuming he hasn't dropped off, actually. So let's see if he comes back on. Hopefully will. But should I think I'll just go to a question from outside first. So yes, so Rob, did you want to ask your question from notes? If you kind of unmute yourself and talk, you should come up on everyone's screen. Okay, that hasn't worked either. So I will ask Rob's question for it. So Rob has actually been to one of our round tables. Oh, he can't unmute, okay, apparently. So I'll ask the questions, okay, while we deal with that. So Rob's question from Notes Coffee, one of the founders of Notes Coffee, also one of the best coffee shops in London, and maybe further afield now, and came to one of our round tables, as I said. He's got a question around, which is obviously very relevant for him, the kind of hospitality industry, and where that will kind of leave people like, in this code of what would be called kind of low paid or low skilled jobs. Perhaps skilled isn't the right word, but certainly low paid jobs. How will they fill that gap after freedom of movement? So Nick, did you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in quickly. You're in this situation. I think we've spoken before about this, and it's a real issue that we don't have a visa for people working in the hospitality sector. Now, clearly, the new system does allow for certain people to come in different capacities at the skill level RQF3. So you can have now bar managers and stewards and people like that who are in certain positions in hospitality, and but it is extremely limited. So I agree, it's going to be a problem getting people to be baristas and various other things that you want them to be. And I think the hospitality sector needs to really see how this all plays out, and if it's really impossible for you guys to get back on your feet, which it may well be, particularly after this pandemic, when you've already taken a massive economic hit on having to shut down. The government may be willing to listen to some form of specialist visa, potentially limited visa, or even looking at, as I said, looking to youth mobility as one of the ways of getting young people in to come and work in bars and restaurants for a limited period, which I think could be a solution, which could be palatable, and you could get people from across the EU on bilateral youth mobility agreements to come in.
Yes, and you see, hospitality is, of course, an industry that I know very well through Cobra Beer. We supply 7,000 restaurants, and it's been through an absolute nightmare since March the 23rd, when the first lockdown started. I mean, almost half the time since then, restaurants, bars, pubs have been shut. And it's I mean, it's been devastating. It's been hit so badly. And if you look at hospitality, leisure, and tourism, it employs 4 million people. And a lot of that has traditionally, you've had several European Union workforce within that, in every part of the UK. It's not just London-centric. Every part of the UK, you would find European Union people from European Union working in pubs, bars, restaurants, hotels. So now we will have to wait and see what happens. So an industry that's already been hit so badly. Now we've had a lot of support from the government, whether it's the furlough scheme, whether it's the rates being relief from rates, VAT being reduced to 5%, the Eat Out to Help Out scheme in August. The government's done a lot to help support the industry. There's no running away from it. It's been devastated. And there will be unemployment. It's already sadly happened. We're trying to prevent the unemployment from happening in the future. And if you look at the figures now, we've only got 4.5% unemployment at the moment. The end of the financial crisis, unemployment went up to 9%. The reason it's only 4.5% is because of all the government support that has been there to prevent unemployment going to those levels that we had after the financial crisis. And we've got to try and retain the businesses, retain the jobs. And that means that businesses have to have access to the workforce that it needs at an affordable basis that it can afford. And so we'll have to wait and see if the new immigration system will be adequate for the hospitality industry, which has gone through so much of a challenge over the past months.
If you had any response to some of the stuff he was talking about with the youth mobility agreements, Tier 5, the cost of immigration, is that something that you're looking at, the CBI, or kind of key
yes.
to?
So youth mobility is so important. I mean, so for example, 2 of the European Union schemes that have been very, very beneficial have been Horizon, which is the research collaboration and the research funding. And thankfully, we're staying on as members of Horizon. And by the way, as Chancellor of the University of Birmingham and my involvement as my fellowships at Oxford and Cambridge, I see firsthand the quality of UK research, but I also see firsthand the power of collaborative research. So when you do collaborative research, the field-weighted impact goes up multifold compared with when you're doing it as a university on your own. I mean, literally, I'm not exaggerating, and go up 3 times. So that Horizon, we are going to be, please forgive the dogs barking in the background, that Horizon program we're continuing to be a part of. But what we're not going to continue to be a part of is the Erasmus scheme. And the Erasmus scheme was fantastic in allowing young people to go and study in Europe and live there and experience living abroad in Europe, and vice versa for Europeans coming to the UK. That's gone. But we're replacing that now with the Turing Scheme. Now, the Turing Scheme is meant to be a £100 million fund. It's meant to replace Erasmus. It will be open to the whole world, so exchange programs around the world. It's aiming to support 35,000 students to go on placements and exchanges annually from September this year onwards. So I know firsthand with Erasmus, it enables students who'd never traveled abroad before to have this wonderful experience of traveling and studying abroad. And it's been hugely beneficial. Let's make sure that the Turing Scheme is similarly successful and around the whole world.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to ask a question that my colleague Sam Dimitri was going to ask, which is around the kind of investor visa. I mean, we've done some research on that and suggested that kind of should be more readily available and more open. I know there's been issues with the transparency side of things, but maybe Nick first, did you want to talk about, do you have any kind of thoughts around the investor visa and whether that could be mobilised kind of post-Brexit to get more kind of people into the UK, more people potentially funding kind of putting risk capital into startup businesses? It'd be great to get your thoughts on that, and then obviously Lord Bilimoria afterwards.
The investor visa is a great opportunity for the government to attract capital into the UK, and it doesn't really do that because it's slightly nervous about the investor visa because all the criticism it gets from Transparency International as a sort of conduit for dodgy funds. I think the position now is that the scheme as it stands is pretty strong in terms of preventing people who come from dodgy backgrounds coming in. So I think we've dealt with that. I think the UK needs to promote it more. It needs to allow people to come in, I think, with lower funds than £2 million, which is currently the limit to invest, the threshold to invest, on the basis that they're putting those into effectively, I would say, public funds. They can do it now. They can put those funds into things like patient capital and government funds that are set up through government departments and that invest in all sorts of social enterprises and startup businesses across the UK. But not many investors seem to be wanting to put their funds into that because the money's at risk. And clearly, just putting your money into a, into an investment portfolio which is conservatively managed, and you get the capital back at the end, hopefully with a bit of interest, seems to be much more attractive than putting the money at risk. So I think the whole scheme needs to be completely changed to actually allow that to happen, and to have some capital going in. And we've talked about things like, not necessarily for startups, but I mean things like infrastructure bonds, to kind of rebuild the UK and level up the UK, where people can put those funds in there. They would be relatively low risk. But I agree, I think that it can be engineered in a way that it attracts people who really want to put in effectively private equity into the UK and fund startups.
Nick has spoken to it. Just to broaden it to the two aspects. One is the Global Entrepreneurship Program that we've had for several years now, which my friend Alpesh Patel, for example, is a great champion, attracting entrepreneurs from around the world, talented entrepreneurs, to come and build their businesses here in the UK. And that's, we want that. There have been various schemes that have been tried, graduate entrepreneur schemes that I was involved in, that I thought were very exciting and very good. That is another way of doing it, where you can have competitions and they can come here and be put on an accelerator type program that is partially sponsored, and then they raise money and they set up the businesses here. So you're bringing talent, you're bringing ideas, and you're enabling those to actually start up in the UK, build in the UK, create employment in the UK, and contribute to our economy. So it's a winning formula if you can get the right people and the right businesses. And I think we should pursue that in a big way. And the other aspect, of course, is we've got to have a tax environment that is really attractive. And a point that people don't make enough is that the UK, not only do we want to promote trade in terms of exports, but we also want to continually attract inward investment. And many people don't realize we're the second largest recipient of inward investment in the world. And we're a magnet for inward investment. And we've got to make sure that we continue, having left the European Union, continue to be an open, welcoming country in terms of investment. And that means that our tax structure, for example, needs to be attractive. So all this talk now about the pandemic, how we're going to pay for it. Well, the best way to pay for the pandemic, the huge hundreds of billions of pounds, 300 billion pounds the government's already put in, a deficit this fiscal year of up to 400 billion pounds, huge amounts of quantitative easing, hundreds of billions of pounds. Well, the way to pay for it, the best way is to grow. And the way to grow is to make sure we continue to attract that inward investment that will then generate investment growth in businesses, which generates jobs, which then pays the taxes, which pay for the public services, which also pay to help pay down the debt that we've had to take on. So I think that inward investment point should not be overlooked.
Our immigrant founders report, Job Creators, found that kind of the half of the UK's fastest growing businesses, half of them have at least one immigrant founder, which was kind of pretty big news, kind of led the FT and such. Roundtables with Kingsley Napley, and one of the things that they kept saying, it's amazing how, I guess, a lot of people start businesses not knowing about kind of CGT and the advantages the UK currently has around that. But every single immigrant entrepreneur knew exactly what the tax advantages were for starting their business in the UK or moving it to the UK. And I think this is something that perhaps the Treasury doesn't quite get at the moment. So I think, yeah, kind of share your concern, particularly around that kind of being able to attract immigrants.
Well, I just spoke in Parliament today on the tax rises. There's this talk of putting up capital gains tax. The Office of Tax Simplification talked about making it equivalent to income taxes. I mean, I think that is absolute nonsense. It would be hugely damaging to the economy to do that. There's talk about putting up corporation tax. We've got to have a tax system that is attractive, a tax system that is competitive. The moment you start putting up tax at a time like this, one, you're going to stifle the recovery. And we need businesses that have gone through a nightmare since March last year. When that recovery comes, and it's coming, it's in a couple of months' time, 2-3 months' time, we start bouncing back. You don't want to stifle that bounce back. You don't want to stifle that growth by imposing higher taxes or imposing austerity. You need to be able to have a competitive environment so that business can grow, that investment continues, domestic investment, inward investment from abroad. That's what needs to remain, and we need to have a competitive tax system. So there should be no talk of putting up taxes at a time like this.
I just wanted to say that the Global Entrepreneur Program is fantastic, and they've just become an innovator endorsing body last week, I think. So they are now able to push through those people coming in through their scheme and to endorse them as innovators, which is fantastic. And it's a great scheme, and the support they give to these people coming in is amazing. But there is a big caveat to that, which is that you have to move the HQ of your business to the UK, which not everybody wants to do. But hopefully, on that tax point, if the tax environment is great, then why not move your HQ to the UK? You can get a lot of benefits. So I think that the tax and the immigration stuff is all comes together really. And the other thing is that we have a sole representative visa, which allows people to send in somebody to come and incorporate in the UK and set up the UK operations, and then start building the business in the UK. That visa needs to be absolutely overhauled, and it is going to be changed. We think that there's going to be a review by the MAC actually, which looks at whether or not we can bring in more than one person to start up the UK branch of an overseas entity. But Lord Bilimoria will be very sensitive to this as well, is that if you're applying in the US for these sole representative visas, it's no questions asked. You can come in, no problems. If you're applying in India, you get put through the mill. You get interviewed. You are asked all sorts of really hard questions about the shareholding in the business and God knows what else. And you're a senior exec in a tech firm. You're really put through the ringer to get these sole representative visas. And I think we really need to look really carefully about how that visa is being dealt with very unfairly across the world in different jurisdictions.
If I may just come in, I don't want to lose the point you made about foreign founders of successful entrepreneurial companies. You look at the United States, Satya Nadella, head of Microsoft, he's from Hyderabad. And we both went to the Hyderabad public school, not at the same time. Sundar Pichai, head of Google, Indian. I mean, I could just go on and rattle the founders of Google were foreign students at Stanford. So it is remarkable how when you enable talent from around the world to come to study and you allow them to become entrepreneurs, to contribute to the economy, it's phenomenal. And I led a debate in the House of Lords a few years ago on the contribution of the minority communities and religious communities to the economy and culture of the UK. And the minorities make up just 15%, the ethnic minorities of the population of the UK. But if you look at the contribution that's been made, there is no way we'd be the 5th largest economy in the world today, and with just 1% of the world's population, without the phenomenal contribution of the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic community in this country, which just makes up 15% of our population.
I'll go to one of the questions. So I think this might be for Nick first. Going forward, how will we be able to check a candidate's right to work? We currently check the biometric and card number on government's website or access to a share code. What type of evidence will we see in the future to check right to work? And will there be a website going forward we can run checks on? So that sounds very much kind of technical and kind of lawyer question. Nick, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah. So I mean, you can still check lots of people who still have BRPs and have the right to work confirmed in a Home Office document. I think the big issue is around EU nationals who have a digital status. But what happens is that the way that it works now is that EU nationals, in fact, you don't need to check EU nationals at the moment until the end of June, when the kind of grace period for registering under the settlement scheme comes to an end. But once they all need to be checked, then you can do it through getting their permission to access their online record, which there's a specific way of doing it. It's done online. You can get confirmation pretty much immediately they're good to go, and it's pretty easy. We're expecting as well that a lot more people will be coming in with digital statuses. So any EU nationals at the moment who are applying for visas to work here come in with a digital status. They don't have a biometric residence permit. So that whole online thing will only grow, and it will hopefully mean that employers can do these checks online very quickly.
Great. I'd like to kind of pick up kind of what was asked, but I guess it's around the kind of startup and innovator visa. I know, Nick, you kind of mentioned it within your opening remarks. Kind of what prospects do you see for kind of changes to that or improvements to that. If it's any kind of consolation, I'm being followed around the internet by the Tech Nation visa, which is good. So it suggests they're putting a lot of money into sending that out to around the world for people to kind of apply for that one. But what about the kind of startup and innovator visa? Because there's been a few teething problems for that.
Yeah, I think, look, the startup and innovator visa started out as really just tech focused. You had to be basically going through accelerator programs or incubator programs to get sponsored. It's expanded to other programs which are more sort of general business focused. There's a fashion focused endorsing body under the innovator. But what we're starting to see is the bad old habits of the Home Office, which they implemented under the entrepreneur visa, where they didn't believe that any of these entrepreneurs were genuine. And they're now starting to question even the endorsing bodies for endorsing people who they think might be dodgy. And again, it tends to be in countries, where there's a historical questioning of why people are coming to the UK. So not the US, but a lot of countries like India, Pakistan, whatever, Russia, China, where they're starting to ask lots of questions about whether or not people should be endorsed. And so I think that there's massive room for improvement in the startup visa and the innovator visa. The rules for getting permanent residence, which you're eligible for after 3 years, are really, really tough. And we don't think that, very many businesses will get to that threshold. It's a real challenge because you have to create loads of jobs or, have turnover of £1 million and, or be selling abroad and, have had IP and things like that. They're quite high. They're quite a high threshold if you think that somebody could be starting from, say a startup all the way to that position. So, I think it needs to be reviewed. It has very low take up simply because people are doing different things. They're finding alternatives to the innovator visa, and that shouldn't be the case. The innovator visa should be fit for purpose. It should attract lots of people into it who are really great, and it should be promoted by the UK as a proper route rather than undermined by the UK saying these people aren't genuine. So again, the UK has a very poor history with entrepreneur visas, where they did the same thing. Now they're doing the same thing with the innovator visa, and it shows a sort of lack of confidence in their own product, that they don't want to sell it to entrepreneurs around the world. So that's all I can say on that one. Great,
thanks. Lord Bilimoria, do you have thoughts on the kind of startup or innovator visa yourself?
I mean, I don't want to repeat, Nick has covered it very comprehensively, that it should be a route that is something that is known around the world, that you can go to the UK and you can start up your business if you've got a valid business idea and it's genuine, the talent is there. We should be welcoming it, as I said earlier on. The problem is, and the analogy I can draw is, you remember going back to the attitude towards students was so badly damaged by the bogus colleges. There were hundreds of bogus colleges that sadly existed that were not genuine. And what happened there was, because of these bad operators, the whole of the education sector was covered by the same, everyone got tarred with the same brush. It was just, everyone was put in that bucket of dodgy, where actually it was the universities themselves. Our universities were completely above board, but were unfortunately being lumped in with the dodgy colleges. And once they were clamped down on, then you could focus on the genuine universities, and you didn't have this negative attitude towards students.
I'm kind of following up on that point. I suppose you mentioned the kind of global entrepreneurship program. It's kind of serious, and various other programs that were great. What would you do in terms of thinking about embassies, thinking about all of the kind of things, or I guess the cultural capital we have around the world, how we could kind of engage those people better? You mentioned competitions. What would you, if you were kind of given that brief for the day and were able to kind of put in the kind of organizational structure for how that could all work, what would you do to spread the word?
I mean, that is such an important point. One of the United Kingdom has one of the biggest, certainly the finest, one of the finest diplomatic forces in the world. Our high commissions and our embassies literally are phenomenal. And the presence we have in countries like India, countries like the United States, phenomenal presence. I mean, literally regional. We're in India, we're not just in Delhi, we're in Bombay, in Mumbai, and in Chennai, and in Calcutta, not just the big metros, we're in Chandigarh. We are all over with deputy high commissions based all around the country. So we have that reach. They're very trade focused, and they're there to help businesses when they're exporting or operating in those countries. But what they're also there is they're meant to be working on inward investment to the UK as well. And that's when they should be spotting talent and directing that talent to the UK, which they're doing. Now, here's a great example, is the Chevening scheme. Now, I don't know how many of you know the Chevening scheme. The Chevening scheme was set up, it's a Foreign Office run scheme that was set up in the 1980s. And it is a competition for scholars. And there are 2,000, I'm using round numbers, 2,000 Chevening scholars that are selected. There are other parts of this program, but the main program is the master's degree scholarship program, where you get over 60,000 students around the world who apply to their local embassy or high commission to be a Chevening scholar, to study for a one-year master's at any university of their choice in the UK, any subject of their choice. And if you get to one of the scholars, you get your travel expenses, your living expenses, and your fees all paid for. And I've addressed these scholars over the years, and they're brightest from all over the world. And here's what happens, is they then become Chevening scholars. So they become part of an alumni group that is now 50,000 strong. And wait for this, out of these Chevening scholars, 50,000 of them since the 80s, we've had 30 world leaders who've graduated through this program. Every time there's a ministerial visit to any country, quite often the embassy or the high commission will get the Chevening scholars to come and meet the visiting ministers, dignitaries from the United Kingdom, and you build that network that then carries on forever. And it's so powerful. Now, just imagine if we can do that with entrepreneurs as well. We should be doing much more. If we have a Chevening scheme for entrepreneurs, it would be amazing.
We're actually putting together a report about how entrepreneurs could be better recognised outside of the current kind of honour system. So we'll come to you for a forward for that. It'd be great to hear, Nick, hear from you, your thoughts about this kind of cultural side of things. Obviously, you speak to people all around the world. Like, how can we improve the UK's view around the world, I suppose, and being open for entrepreneurship?
I'll share a story with you. A few years ago, it was quite a few years ago. A few years ago, I was representing a very well-known hedge fund manager who'd set up hedge funds not in London, in the US, and then in Geneva, and was coming to the UK, and we decided that coming under the entrepreneur route was probably the right way to do it, because it was going to be his own business. And we needed to get this done quite quickly. And I reached out to our contacts at DTI, as it then was, DIT now, in Canada, to say, hey guys, can you get this pushed through? We really need to get this done quickly. This was at a time when entrepreneur visas took a long time. And they said, oh, sorry, we really can't help you, because we only actually work with bringing businesses onshore into the UK. And I kind of think there is still that problem that, the focus is really on bringing in big corporates in, because they're the big wins for the UK is landing these big corporates. Now, don't get me wrong, DIT, working in the US, particularly, I've seen them on the West Coast in the US, in the San Francisco and Los Angeles office. They're amazing. They are persuading fast growth tech companies to set up in the UK, and giving them a lot of support and information around that. So they are fantastic at that. But that's the corporates. On the individuals, again, not so great. But again, I'm hoping that people like GEP, Global Entrepreneurship Program, will be part of that whole ecosystem of actually attracting individuals. But the UK needs to be much more confident about being able to say, we really want you guys, not you companies, but you guys to come in, guys and girls to come in to the UK to set up, either to start up your company in the UK or to grow it super fast in the UK, because it's a great place to attract capital and skills and so on. So yeah, again, there's some great campaigns. The great campaign by DIT, and the government has been fantastic, but it could focus a lot more on targeting those super duper individuals coming out of all the top universities around the world, particularly.
Great, thanks, Nick. I'll ask you a final question, then I'll go to Lord Bilimoria to kind of sum up. And I guess it's just getting into a little bit around the costs that you mentioned earlier and the kind of the transition side of things. Do you think I mean, how do you think the costs should be set? Do you think they should kind of freeze the current costs and just say that's how it's going to be for the next few years, or do they need to work out a better kind of cost benefit analysis of how these things work? Because I see obviously they go up ahead of inflation constantly every time a new kind of price is announced. And then on that transition front, kind of what the kind of quick fix is for that? Is it just announcing, okay, once no matter what you're doing in the UK, that counts towards your indefinite leave to remain, if that's the right term currently? Yeah, over to you.
The cost side is complicated. I mean, I'm sure most of the people listening into this webinar will have seen that the UK makes a huge amount of money out of visas. I mean, billions of pounds as a profit from processing visas, where the cost of actually doing the work and getting the application done is much lower than the cost that these individuals and companies are paying. So I really think that there needs to be something, that needs to be looked at a bit more carefully. I think that the cost needs to be reviewed on the basis of who you're trying to attract. Yeah, if you're trying to attract, really super high skilled people doing STEM subjects or PhD subjects or whatever, maybe you waive the fees for those people. I don't know. They really, and it's probably too complicated to do it, but we've always thought that, they should do everything to bend over backwards to get these really amazing people into the UK. And at the moment, it's just very expensive, and it limits the number. It limits actually the employers who can feasibly sponsor people to come into the UK. Who maybe have found an amazing person who has exactly the right skill set for developing their product here or developing their platform. So again, I just think that needs to be reviewed, and it should be an ongoing process rather than thinking constantly it's only going one way, which is up. It should really not go any further, and they should really look at trying to segment it and make it more attractive.
Awesome, great. And then the final question to Lord Bilimoria, I think we have to end on a positive note. We've got kind of 100 people or so on the call, all kind of pro kind of the things that we're talking about, I presume. Kind of what should people do? How should people kind of get involved, I guess, with the policy making process that you're involved in, both at CBI and the House of Lords, and also the kind of cultural aspect of kind of talking up Britain as a place to do business. So what's your call to arms?
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Philip. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Nick. I've learned a great deal from the session. Thank you to all of you who are attending. I think we've got Mark Ottmans here on the call who organised the Global Entrepreneurship Week. Now, this is an event that takes place every week and I've spoken over the years. Prime Ministers take part in this event, and it's event after event throughout the country celebrating entrepreneurship in Britain. So I think we are now, to one of the points that Nick made, we need to shout from the rooftops about Britain and the wonderful things that we do. And we are now one of the best places in the world to set up a business. London is in fact, the best city in the world to have your global headquarters. So I think that we are a magnet for inward investment. We have capabilities. If you just think of what we take for granted, every aspect that you look at, manufacturing, and with Cobra, I'm a proud manufacturer in Britain. Okay, we manufacture in Netherlands, we manufacture in Belgium, we have breweries in India with my partners, Molson, Coors. But manufacturing makes up 10% of our GDP. But the manufacturing that we do in the UK is world class. Whether it's our automobiles, whether it's our aerospace, or whether it's our beer, we are world-class manufacturers. Our services capabilities, our lawyers are the best in the world, our accountants are the best in the world, our creative industries, our advertising agencies, our musicians, our cinema, our theater, our art. I mean, you name it. Our design. Who's the designer of Apple? Jonathan Ives. He's a Brit. We have amazing capability. Our universities, which we've spoken about, it's not an American university that has won the most Nobel Prizes. It's Cambridge University has won the most Nobel Prizes in the world. So this phenomenal capability we have, we need to make the most of it, shout from the rooftops, attract the best talent, and particular entrepreneurs to this country. And that will be a benefit, not just from the country they've coming to the UK. It's not a brain drain. It forms a partnership and a living bridge with the country that they've come from to the benefit of both countries. So it's a complete win-win. and we should go on championing this. So thank you for holding this event.
Brilliant way to end it. Thank you so much, Karen Lord Bilimoria. Thank you to Nick for speaking so eloquently, and for Kingsley Napley for hosting us. So leaves me just to say, everyone have a lovely day, and yeah, look forward to the next one we host of these. So thank you very much for your time.